Okay, let's get started. So welcome to our Rolling into 2023 with BlackLine webinar. Before we get started today, I just wanted to cover some quick housekeeping. We are recording this session, and the recording and slide deck will be sent out in a follow-up email. The session is also CPE eligible. In order to receive the 1 CPE credit, you will need to stay on the call for a minimum of 50 minutes and answer the 3 polling questions. The CPE certificates will be sent out in a separate email following this session. Your line has been muted, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will either answer them at the end of the session as time allows or follow up with you after the training. Also, if time allows, there will be an opportunity to come off mute and ask your questions live on the call. I will now turn it over to Brandon to introduce himself.
And thank you so much for everybody for taking the time, especially during this busy kind of shortened holiday week to join us today for the webinar. So my name is Brandon Rayborn. I am the BlackLine practice lead at Sensiba San Filippo. And I know that that's a little bit of a mouthful, so sometimes we'll also shorten that to SSF or Sensiba, whichever you prefer. So a little bit about my background. I've been solely focused on working with and around the BlackLine product or suite of product offerings for the past decade or so. And in that time, I've been on the client side as a system admin. I've served as a consultant for a number of years, implemented about 100 or so clients for various different BlackLine products. And that kind of crossed, everything from smaller mid-market organizations up to large Fortune 500 companies, some of the more marquee names out there. And really just excited to have everyone on the call today joining us to go through what are some basic blocking and tackling, right, that you might want to know when you consider how to roll your BlackLine instance. So without further ado, I'll let Amy introduce herself.
Thanks, Brandon. I am Amy Peterson, and I started at SSF in May as an implementation specialist specifically for BlackLine. Prior to that, I was a BlackLine system admin for over 5 years at a Fortune 100 multinational company. So not that long ago, I was sitting in your shoes, and I know that the process of rolling your instance forward for the new year can seem daunting. But the purpose of today's webinar is to provide you with the tools you will need to do so successfully and ease any anxiety you may be feeling. I will now turn it back over to Brandon to give us an overview of SS. Brandon, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So thanks, Amy. So SSF is a full service accounting, consulting, and advisory firm. So we're comprised of over 300 professionals across 6 offices, primarily located on the West Coast. And we also have a number of remote resources that have joined the firm in the past couple of years. Amy and I being 2 of those as prime examples. And we have clients throughout the North America region. So in addition to the kind of traditional audit and tax services, our consulting group offers a wide range of services. And this includes things such as fractional CFOs and controllers, outsourced accounting services, internal audits, and finally, technology solutions. And we're also one of a handful of accounting firms that's B Corp certified. And this is a designation that indicates that we strive to balance purpose and profits. You can find out more about that on our website at ssfllp.com. There's been a lot of interest in the B Corp certification, especially amongst companies that are focusing on sustainability as part of their competitive advantage. And we have a number of resources out on the website if that's something that you're looking to navigate. Please also just feel free to reach out. My contact information will be included at the end of the deck. And that deck, by the way, will be distributed to everyone on the call. Next, Amy, if you don't mind. So focusing a little bit more at the granular level on our consulting department specifically, we really are comprised of three primary components. The first of which is our technology solutions offerings. And this is where we partner with best-in-class software publishers to help improve the lives of our clients by helping them to manage their businesses in a more effective and efficient manner. So the primary platforms that we work with are shown in the bottom right corner of this slide. And of course, you'll notice BlackLine is on that list. And that is really the primary focus of today's webinar. I just want to briefly, though, call your attention to some other services that we do offer within the firm. So with our internal audit and SOX offerings, we can help clients design, document, test, evaluate, and improve their processes and procedures. And this can be an engagement as small as documenting a payroll process, or as large as implementing full SOX for a newly public company, or for a company on the pathway to going public. And then finally, our outsourced accounting division, it's just like the service name implies. So there are clients out there that will hire us to perform some or all of their accounting function so they can focus on their core business. Additionally, under this umbrella, we'll provide family office support and advisory services for organization or for family offices out there. If you have any questions or you want to just know more, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else in the consulting group, and we will be happy to point you to the right contact for your particular needs. And with that, I'll transfer it back over to Amy so she can dive a little bit deeper into the content of the webinar today.
Thanks, Brandon. So our agenda for today is as follows. Brandon just covered an overview of Sensiba San Filippo and what we do. So next we will talk about how to prepare your BlackLine instance for the new year. And then we will move into some best practices, tips and tricks, and end with some next steps that you can take. So let's get started. As we get started, I just wanted to make a general comment that the topics we are about to discuss are a general overview that take a holistic point of view to achieve rolling the period forward for the next year. Not all topics may apply to your organization's unique instance, as several of these modules you may not have implemented yet. The first and possibly the most important task that will need to be completed is to add in the period end dates for the next calendar year. If this step is missed, imports into your system will fail and users will not be able to toggle to your periods and complete the assignments. While you are completing this step, be sure to indicate using the drop-down listing which periods are quarter ends or your fiscal year end in order to get your frequencies aligned correctly. It is a best practice to only build out periods for 1 year at a time. One time, as a system admin, I tried to be really proactive and build out 2 years at a time, thinking I could save time next year. The users, unfortunately, were not very happy with me as the periods put the most recent on the top. So they had to actually toggle down the listing to get to the current year and the current period. So learn from my mistake and just do 1 calendar year at a time in order to provide a better user experience. One item I would also like to note is that towards the bottom of every slide, there will be a file path listed, and this file path will lead you to the item that's discussed on that slide so that you can easily reference it and make any changes or updates to your system. So on that same screen that you added the new periods, you can also assign the due dates for each period end date for reconciliations, variance, and SIM. If the due dates are left blank on the screen, users cannot see in the system when their assignments are due and may not complete them timely. And this may also hold up your close process. This will also impact any upcoming or delinquent alerts you may have turned on, as the notifications will not get sent out. In addition, this will impact running any reports based on late or past due statuses for reconciliations, variance, or SIM, since there is no due date to calculate this off of. In the user's preparer and approver grids, the due date columns will remain blank unless the due dates are assigned. So if this step is missed, there's usually at least one user that will notice this and point it out that the due dates are missing. It is easiest just to assign the due dates when you create and set up the new periods. The final item to update on this screen is to ensure that all prior periods have been closed for importing balances and rates. It is a best practice to close the period from importing balances each month once the balances are final and have loaded into BlackLine. Not closing a period increases the risk of potentially importing account balances for the incorrect period. I know from prior experience that if the date on an import file is incorrect and that a period is open for importing, it will in fact overwrite the balances for the reconciliations and will unfortunately cause a fire drill with a lot of rework, not only for you as the admin, since you will need to update the balances and get them corrected in the system, but also for the preparers and approvers of the impacted and now system decertified reconciliations that will need to be recertified. In this instance that I referenced before, I also needed to document what happened and how we corrected the issue so that when the auditors came in to look at the impacted reconciliations for that period and saw that they were completed late and past the due date by several periods, as a matter of fact, there was documentation done so that they could view them. And if you are anything like me, less communication with auditors is usually the best practice. So just make sure that your prior periods are closed for importing balances and save yourself from some extra work and extra auditor face time. And our first polling question has popped up on your screen. So the question is, what is your knowledge based on this topic? So the first one is, I've attended trainings on this topic before and am familiar. I've never attended a training on this topic, but I do know a little bit about it, or I've never attended a training on this topic and I don't know much. So we'll give you some time to answer the polling question so that you get credit for your CPE. And it looks like we've got everybody to respond, so I will end the poll. And it looks like some of you, or most of you, have never attended a training on this topic, but you do know about it, so that's good. So we'll just go over some general tips and tricks for you. And then if you've never attended a training, hopefully that you can use this information as you're rolling your period forward or your instance forward for the next year. So next we will move into custom frequencies. So if you and your company are using custom frequencies, and to know if you are using custom frequencies, an example of this would be that any of your reconciliations, tasks, variants are set to any frequency other than monthly. And this is, again, for any module. You will need to go in and set up the custom frequencies for the next year. By assigning the correct period end dates to the corresponding frequencies, this will ensure that any record with a non-monthly frequency will be required for the specified period. Each period end date in the drop-down listing will need to have all of the applicable periods added to it. And a period end date can and will be used in multiple custom frequencies. So for example, the 12/31 period will most commonly be assigned to monthly, quarterly, and annually. This is important, again, because if you have tasks, variants, or even some reconciliations that are completed with any frequency other than monthly, those records will not appear for certification in that period. Updating the task calendar is critical for clients that use a task calendar. And I will mention that this is more of an exception than the norm for clients to use this function. So if you've never heard of this or don't know what it is, don't worry, your company probably isn't using this function. But if you are, the task calendar can be created and uploaded for the entire year. Alternatively, this can also be uploaded quarterly or monthly, depending on how your schedule is. And if you feel like those dates may change in the future, this may be a better option. Otherwise, the best practice is just to do it annually. So you've done it once for the whole year and you are set. One important point to note is that if the task calendar does not get uploaded, none of the tasks will have any due dates, and the preparers and approvers will not receive any warning or delinquent notifications related to tasks, as well as reports on late or past due tasks will not be applicable since those due dates will not be set to be calculated from. For clients that are using the matching module, year-end is a great time to review your matching setup. Review the match transactions grid to ensure there are no unloaded transactions that need administrative action. If there are any unloaded transactions in any of the match sets, review the transactions and follow up with the preparer to ensure these lines should be removed from the system, and unload any applicable transactions. In the unmatched transactions section, review the number of unmatched transactions and the posting dates for each match set, and follow up with the assigned preparers if the dates or number of transactions lies outside of your company's tolerance. Finally, review the pass rules for all match sets to see if they are matching appropriately. One item to look for is if any rules show the word delete in front of it with a blue hyperlink. And this just indicates that this rule has not picked up any matches yet. It may be helpful to either delete this rule or adjust the pass rule so that it can be matched with the transactions as desired. Reviewing the match sets should be done periodically to ensure the system is working as expected. Another good time to review a match set is if any new types of transactions are expected to come in, specifically for a new vendor or a new document type, as some pass rules may need to either be created to capture these matches appropriately or updated to ensure the new transactions are matched. For clients using the journal module, review any validations and dependent validations to ensure they are correct and up to date. This information is typically a scheduled import directly from your ERP, but it is a good practice to validate this information at least once a year to ensure that it is still accurate and correct. If your company is using journal masters, check to see if any of the active journal masters are set to end at the end of the year. It may be helpful to send a list of these entries to the preparers to review to ensure that they are set up correctly and if any adjustments need to be made, or if the entry needs to be reset up for the new year. There is a journal setting that requires users to enter an end date for all journal masters so that the entries do not run indefinitely. You can check if your company has this setting activated by going to System, Settings, and then Journal Settings, and then just look to see if the box is checked next to that line. If it's unchecked, that means it's not turned on. If the box is not checked it might be worthwhile to have a conversation with your management and/or internal controls or audit to see if this is a setting that your company should be taking advantage of. If your company does not currently have this enabled or just simply chooses not to, it is important to have the preparers review the entries at least annually to ensure the entry is still necessary and correct. Since these entries typically auto-certify each month, it can be easy to lose sight of these entries, and year-end is a great time to validate and review these items, especially as numbers or accounts may change at this point in time as well. So next we'll move into some best practices and tips and tricks for you as an admin. So one trick, and probably my favorite tip, is to add any admin tasks that you are responsible for into BlackLine tasks if your company is actively using this product. It is a great depository to list out the steps and documentation needed to complete these admin tasks, especially since a portion of these tasks are only done once a year. It's easy to kind of forget where to go or what needs to be updated. When I was an admin, I created a task for every single setting or update that I needed to make in the system, whether it be monthly, quarterly, or annually. This essentially became my to-do list to ensure that the system would run smoothly and without any issues. I was also able to add any screenshots as documentation and proof that a process was completed for the auditors. Again, less space time for the auditors since they had access to our system and they could go in and see that the task was completed and when it was completed. And probably most importantly, this allowed me the ability to take time off once in a while, since all of my tasks were fully documented in the system, and I could simply have my backup go in and complete the tasks for me while I was out. To enter your administrative tasks into BlackLine, I recommend using the task upload template to save time by adding in your complete checklist. A best practice is to monitor the import of the first files for the new year to ensure the dates on the files rolled over successfully. Sometimes there are issues with the dates if they're not set in through your imports in your ERP for the next year. And I've run into this before. And it's just a quick call to IT so that they could update that, or if you have the ability to update that yourself. Make sure you are reviewing all of the files that are automatically importing into your system for all active modules. And you can go into import status and job status to verify that all of these imports came in successfully. And if they don't, make sure that you're reading the error message so that you can get that corrected and it flows into your system seamlessly the next time. If the dates on your file are incorrect, and by closing the prior periods from import, you reduce the risk of incorrectly updating any prior periods. But I also found that it was helpful to close those future periods that you just created that are not currently pulling in balances, just in case that file does not have the correct dates. I learned this the hard way and related to that one time where I proactively created 2 years of period end dates in the system, the first mistake. But not only that, the period end date on a non-fiscal year end file did not get updated correctly, and it pulled in balances for a period 15 months in advance. It was not ideal to have to explain to users why they saw balances loaded for this period and what was being done to correct it. So learn from my mistakes and only have those periods open for importing that are actually supposed to be pulling in balances and close all the rest of them. At least once a year, it is a best practice to review your current users listing and their access. As users join the company, get promoted, move to different departments, or if they leave your organization, it is important that these changes are reflected in your BlackLine instance. BlackLine provides a number of different options in the reporting module that can easily assist you with this process. Another quick and easy option is simply to go to the user's admin grid and sort on the login date for the oldest date. A good check is to see if any users have not been in the system in the last quarter or so. However, an exception to this rule might be any internal or external auditors, or if your organization was anything like my prior one was, our upper management logged in sporadically and not necessarily once a quarter, but they still wanted to keep their user license active. If there are any other users that have not logged in during this period of time, these users may need to be made inactive. Always check with the user and probably their manager as well before inactivating them, since some of their assignments may need to be reassigned to current users so that they are completed, or the user may still need their user license and just need to be reminded to log in. As a best practice, you only want current users in BlackLine to optimize your user licenses. By doing so, this can help your company save money on the number of user licenses you have, or allow you to reallocate these licenses to other team members. And speaking of teams, one additional item related to users that you may also want to review is any teams and the members on the teams that you have set up to ensure it is still accurate and up to date. And our second polling question has popped up. And the question is, how long have you been a BlackLine user? And the options are less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or more than 5 years. And we'll give it just a minute for everybody to answer. And it looks like there's just a few more out there. And we'll give it another 5 seconds. One more second. And we'll end it. So most of you have actually been a BlackLine user for less than 1 year. So most of you probably haven't even had the opportunity or chance to roll your period forward. And then the rest of you have been on for 1 to 3 years. So maybe you've only done it 1 or 2 times. Year end is also a great time to review the account settings for reconciliations. Due to groupings and maybe even account rules that you have set up, it is important to periodically check to ensure that what management intended to be set up in BlackLine is true. If not, make any adjustments using the account settings template or mass update account settings function. A few essential items that you may want to review include key and non-key accounts. Many companies use 2 different due dates for key versus non-key accounts, and ensuring that reconciliations are assigned appropriately will help aid in timely completion. Risk ranking and account type are 2 other fields that you may want to review to verify that they are still accurate and correct in your system, as well as any other specific settings that are unique to your organization, such as checklists and auto certification rules and limits. It is important to periodically be checking your admin homepage for any unassigned accounts or tasks in any of the modules on your grids, and for any pending requests. This should be done at a minimum of monthly, if not weekly or even daily, depending on your company's BlackLine usage, especially during the close process or when they're actively working on account reconciliations and tasks. Doing so ensures that the work is being assigned and therefore completed timely. For pending requests, always check the period of the request being made. And as a rule of thumb, the current period is typically fair game for requesting decertification to make updates. But anything outside of that, I would always follow up with the requester and/or their manager to ensure that the period noted for the request is correct. It is easy for users to have toggled to a different period while viewing a task or reconciliation and made the request not realizing that they were in the wrong period. By completing this extra validation step, it can save on rework for the users and ensure a clean and accurate audit trail as well. Now is also a great time to review due dates with management for account reconciliations and, if applicable, variance in SIM. Oftentimes, management will want to adjust the due dates for certain items to coordinate with the goals of the company for the new year. Updating due dates rules can easily be done in the due date rules setting to help ensure management and the users are aligned on the expected timeframe for completeness. One other item you may want to review with management is if you are using certification thresholds to ensure they are still appropriately aligned with company expectations. It is important to upload your company's holiday calendar or calendars into BlackLine to ensure that business days will compute correctly and accurately. These calendars can be manually updated directly in BlackLine, or they can be imported. If your company has different locations, such as global offices, and these locations recognize different holidays, the holiday calendar can be imported by location, provided that the locations have also been set up and assigned in BlackLine. If the holiday calendars are not updated, so for example, if New Year's Day is a holiday that your company recognizes, it is not added to the holiday calendar, and you are using business days to calculate due dates, BlackLine will treat that day as a normal business day, and all of your day one tasks will be due on that day. So users, if you have alerts set up, may get those emails on the incorrect day that they are off for a holiday. If the holiday was added in BlackLine, BlackLine will automatically skip over that date and treat the next day as the first business day and move those out automatically, which would truly be the first working day or business day of the month and new year. Review all prior periods to ensure that all reconciliations, tasks, journal entries, etc. have made it to the final stage of completion. If there are records that still need to be completed, reach out to the assigned users to see if there are any issues with the records and either adjust the record as necessary. For example, maybe an account needed to be added to the account group, and then have them complete the assignments for the period or periods. Keeping up with this task periodically will make your annual audit easier and reduce auditor inquiries. A best practice would be to check assignment statuses monthly or quarterly to ensure work is being done and not cause a backlog at year end. There are many reports in BlackLine that can be scheduled to help assist with this as well. At my previous company, the morning after reconciliations were due each month, I would run reporting for our controller and send him the naughty list of users who had delinquent reconciliations, as well as the number and dollar value of these outstanding reconciliations. Having the list sent to management helped ensure timely reconciliations because no one wanted their name on the naughty list. And yes, this is actually how the company referred to this report all year long, and not just in December because Santa may have been watching. One feature in BlackLine that may be underutilized is the company news section. In this section, admins can add in announcements or general user information and include a date range where the information is visible to users. Year-end is a great time to review announcements that currently exist in the system. If the news is no longer needed, the admin can delete it, or if it is still applicable, the date range can be extended out, or any new announcements can be added. At my former company, we used the company news to highlight key close dates, such as when the ledger would be closing for journals in BlackLine, and a section on who the system and local admins were and how and when to reach out and contact them. Adding in the admin information was beneficial because it provided users with a guideline on when they should be reaching out to the admin versus maybe asking their manager for just a simple accounting question. This saved on the number of pings, emails, and phone calls I would receive as the admin, so I could truly focus on the admin issues and not necessarily any accounting problems. So now we will discuss some next steps that you can take.
And Amy, before we go to next steps,
Yep.
I think we might have a question from one of the
Sure.
attendees. And if it's all right, if you want to open up the floor just for a minute, can we have, I guess, Shannon, do we have that question that we can have it read out, or do we want to open up the mic?
The question was, is holiday upload only required for the task module?
No, if you're using account reconciliations based on your business dates, you'll also want to get the holiday calendar in there as well.
Good question. Yeah. And you can have different holiday calendars, right, for different locations out there. So that can be really helpful. Those different calendars there, I think, apply more in the task module. I think in account recs, you kind of get one bite at the apple, so to speak. And that's why there's that default holiday calendar. All right. Any other questions, or was that the primary one that came through?
That's all the questions for now.
Okay, then I think what we can do, Amy, is move to next steps, and then we'll wrap it up and open the floor for any other questions that that folks might have. So please, if there's anything that's mentioned on the webinar today that wasn't clear, or maybe it sparked another thought, we're going to have that opportunity, I think, in just a short couple of minutes. So go ahead, Amy.
All right. So as maybe you're preparing your budgets for next year, make sure to include the BlackLine User Conference in San Diego at the Manchester Grand Hyatt on September 11th through the 13th. This is an amazing opportunity to learn more about BlackLine functions and upcoming features, earn CPE, and network with your peers and BlackLine employees. Also, join SSF at our booth in the Innovation Hub, where we are already making plans for the awesome swag we'll have to hand out as well. So please join us for an amazing conference this September. And now I will turn it back over to Brandon to introduce BlackLine Boost.
All right, thanks, Amy. So we are very excited today to announce on today's webinar that we do have a free offering. For those of you out there that might be struggling to think through exactly what steps you want to take on your BlackLine journey. And we have trademarked this as the BlackLine Boost. And we find this to be an effective way for existing firm clients or existing BlackLine clients, let me say it that way, to review 3 primary areas for best practices. And these are all going to be provided in a report that can be leveraged by the accounting and the finance team to drive process improvement around BlackLine within your particular organization. So all it takes is 2 hours of your time. So it's kind of broken out by 30 minutes for an introductory call to really understand where you are and where the challenges are. Then we'll have an hour to review the settings with business or system administrators directly within your BlackLine instance. And then finally, the last 30 minutes is to review that kind of final BlackLine Boost report that comes out and talk about next steps in your journey. The information provided in a BlackLine Boost report can be invaluable for organizations that are looking to further unlock the value and the efficiencies from their BlackLine subscription. And we will even ensure that specific areas of concern or pain points are identified with the recommendations to improve the overall experience within your BlackLine instance. So you can think of this, and this is going to be my analogy, as a huge blinking advertisement for your organization, saying that we want to get what we were promised from our BlackLine instance, right? My guess is most of the folks on the call today, at some point you went through the BlackLine sales cycle and you probably heard about all these great automations and features that are possible out there. The first step, I think, to getting to the point where you're able to unlock that value is to consider doing kind of an assessment of where you currently are. And really, the BlackLine Boost is going to help to identify what steps can be taken in the future, right, to unlock that value, providing a roadmap for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and even 2 years to achieve the goals that you have identified during the process. And then there's just kind of 3 primary focus areas of the BlackLine Boost. The first being the settings review. So we would kick the tires, peek underneath the hood of all global system settings to ensure they're in line with the established best practices. And it's also going to include an analysis of your license usage, as well as some other global system settings that are kind of more on the recommendation level that your organization might want to consider. And what we do see other companies out there adopt that are kind of in that best-in-class category within their respective industries. And then secondarily, we would look at the administration within your system. And so we'll review features such as groups, teams, evaluations, checklists, your use of reporting to see if you're in line, right, with the established best practices. And this portion of the Boost can also look at completeness for various administrative aspects of the client's BlackLine instance, such as are frequencies filled out, are templates being used or utilized fully, and looking at kind of settings within the individual accounts, groupings of accounts, and even dependencies within tasks. So we'll also kind of look holistically at your organization's use of BlackLine to get reconciliations and tasks to that final certification state for a given sampling of historical periods. And then the final component of the BlackLine Boost is really looking at automation. So we would look at SFTP, automated or scheduled imports, as well as if there is a connector involved, what APIs are being scheduled and running. We would assess the errors, if there are any, right, upon data loads. And then we would look at auto certification rules within your account reconciliation product and say, where can we leverage that to get even more system certified reconciliations? And then finally, for those of you out there that have gone as far as adopting rules-based administration, we would help to look through some of that or to recommend that you might consider rules-based administration. And that's just really kind of a more advanced feature that allows organizations to automate some of the rote kind of regular administrative tasks out there. And all of this is just to help you really unlock that value and use your instance to its fullest potential. So if anyone's interested, Amy, if you don't mind going to the next slide. There is a QR code, and remember the deck's going to be provided at the conclusion of this webinar a little bit later on this afternoon, where you can book time on my calendar directly for that 30-minute intro call. Again, this is free. There's no pressure. We offer this as a service because we fundamentally believe that if we can help you be successful in your BlackLine instance, it will ultimately lead us to that success as well. And this time of year is kind of a good time to really kind of assess where are you and where do you want to go next year in your journey. And with that, I think we have our third polling question that just came up. And the question is, how prepared do you feel with rolling into 2023? And the answers, the optional answers are not prepared, somewhat prepared, or well prepared. And we're almost full with our answers. So we'll give folks just another minute or so. All right. I think we're still missing one. If one other person wants to try to get in there and get your CPA, if not, we'll close it pretty soon. And it looks like, okay, we'll go ahead and close it. The answer was kind of, the most common answer, I guess, was somewhat prepared. So it seems like most folks are probably in that category. I appreciate the honesty and the candor here that nobody said that they feel like they're well prepared at this point. And for those two that are out there saying you're not prepared, hopefully you found this webinar to be useful. If there's anything that we can do to help guide you, or just to kind of help point you in the right direction, we're always here. You can consider us a resource. And I think with that, Amy, if you go to the next slide.
We did have one question, Brandon and Amy, if you wanted to answer that.
Okay.
The question was, for 2023, the year 2023, what is the ideal date that all the admin steps should be completed? Is it 12/30 since it's the last working day of the year, or can these steps be completed today?
Great question. I'll take part of it, and then I'll let Amy kind of give some of her thoughts as well. I guess my thought is some of this absolutely can be done ahead of time, right? So especially when we start talking about setting up period end dates, configuring the custom frequencies, you can do that today, and that might be the recommended path, especially if come, right after 12/30. I'm sure, for anybody that's on a December fiscal year end, that is a very busy time of year. And then of course, we've all got the holidays too, right? So anything that you can do to kind of get a little bit ahead, we would recommend you consider that. You can load the holiday calendars ahead. Any of that kind of pre-setup, I would consider doing that. And even the completeness aspects that Amy, I think, alluded to, right? Of going back in time, closing periods for imported balances where they shouldn't be loading anymore. And, potentially looking at are all reconciliations task, variance reconciliations, whatever the various products you have implemented, are they kind of progressing to that final completed state? I think some of that can be done now, right? Ultimately, the timing of the interface is going to drive for your individual client when you really have to have this information complete, right? So let me say that in a slightly different way. If, let's say, you don't have the January 2023 period set up in your BlackLine instance, and all of a sudden, you get back from New Year's and things are crazy because it's, year end and there's just so much going on, and you, for whatever reason, decide to, to kind of effectively load those balances, or maybe that interface is coming in automatically. That's an example, I think, of where I would try to get ahead if possible, right? So for those of you that are on automated interfaces, you might want to consider getting ahead of the game and trying to do some of that before you go out on leave for the holidays. Okay. Amy, any other thoughts there on that question?
No, I think, yes, you can be very proactive with most of these steps. It's just maybe checking that period, like Brandon kind of alluded to, when you're loading balances for previous or current periods. That would be the only thing that I would caution to just be cognizant of timing on. But definitely if you're like, oh, I'm running short on time, I'm out of the office coming up, I don't actually have time to complete most of these, I would say definitely make sure that January period is set up in your system, and that holiday calendar, at least New Year's, if your company recognizes New Year's, and any other holidays in January, is set up. And then The other ones, yes, they can either be done proactively or when you get back after that.
Excellent. Any other questions that we can help with before we kind of wrap up the webinar today? All right. I know sometimes asking a question in a webinar is a little bit daunting. So for those of you that are like me and you're going to get off this webinar and probably think of 5 questions that you wish you would have asked, please, feel free that our contact information will be at the end of this deck. We are here for you. Consider us a resource to help in any way that we can. And with that, I'll let Amy kind of wrap it up if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just go through this conclusion slide. So we covered the basic tools to successfully roll over your BlackLine instance for the new year, and some of the next steps that you can take with your BlackLine instance to take it to that next level. And again, if you have any specific questions regarding BlackLine or want to reach out for additional information, you can contact Brandon or myself, and I will actually advance to that slide so that you can see our contact information. And this will also be sent out in the slide deck that gets sent out later on. And I guess if there are any other questions at this time, feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute and you can ask.
Okay, it looks like can the instructions for rolling over 2022 to 2023 be emailed?
Like a checklist, is that what?
I guess that's how I would assume it. Yeah, go ahead, Amy. I'll let you take this one.
Sure. So BlackLine U has the checklist, but if it's helpful, we can include that. I have it downloaded, so we can include that in the email that goes out as well. So that's just one last step that you have to take. Good question.
The only thing I might caution on that is, BlackLine's checklist is designed to really cover all the customers out there, right? So you just want to also be cognizant of whatever the particular nuances are in your instance that might need to be considered. I think the content of today's webinar went through really in a broad brushstroke all of the real issues that we could foresee clients with most of their core products needing. But if you have additional configuration set up, you just might want to consider that. And it may not, that BlackLine checklist may not be 100% comprehensive. It's just a little caveat there.
Good point, yes. Any other questions?
I think there might be one in Q&A. Did we get that one already? Oh yeah, we did. Perfect. Okay, and I think at this point we've met the 50 minutes. I think we did the 3 polls. So everyone on the call should also be getting CPE. So that'll be kind of communicated to you. We really appreciate your time, especially this week. I know it's a challenge, kind of the closer we get to the holidays. One of the things that we will look to do in future years, we're going to continue to do this annual kind of how to roll your BlackLine instance webinar. We might just look to push it up a little bit earlier in December. But for those of you that are looking to kind of get ahead, I might just encourage you, think about doing some of this before you kind of go on leave, and that'll put you in a good spot for when we come back from the new year. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.